Hi, welcome to ML Buchman's 5 Insider Factoids. That's answers to questions that you folks have asked. So today we're going to talk about Bring on the Dusk, Night Stalkers number 6. Warning, there are spoilers. Okay, first I want to talk about Michael Gibson. He was this side character that I created back in Emily number 1, The Night is Mine, Night Stalkers number 1 in the Emily Beale universe, what became the Emily Beale universe. Um, but he was created as a side character because one of the ways that you know a character is particularly good or particularly impressive isn't just how they're written, it's how other characters see them. So Michael initially doubts Emily, and her skills completely win him over after we've already seen from her point of view that he's the best Delta Force operator out there. So it becomes this feedback thing where we as readers get to go, oh, he's really good. Oh, he's really good, and he thinks she's really good. And so that elevates Emily in the reader's estimation. So I wrote this, submitted it to my editor, and she said, "Oh, please tell me Michael is the next book." He wasn't. And there's a reason, because what happened was um, I had created the series as the four seats. There are four seats in a Black Hawk direct action penetrator, the DAP Hawk, that's the star of those first four books, the star helicopter. And the idea was the next the next two were the Little Bird, the MH6 Little Bird, which has two seats. So that was going to be my first six novels in the Night Stalker series. We'll talk about what happened with Chinook when we get to the next video. But so Michael wasn't planned. I already had the couples figured out for three of the first four books. And Michael wasn't going to fit three and a half. I actually had the hero of the fourth one. Uh, and Michael wasn't going to fit with any of them because he didn't live in the helicopter and he wasn't part of that team. And I was building this whole team. And so I looked at the editor and I said, no, he's number 6. And she just started cursing. But she'd bought the first four and she ended up buying the next three. So she finally got Michael's story, which drove her nuts. And the reason is Michael doesn't talk, right? He's a Delta Force operator. They're actually called the Quiet Warriors. They don't speak to anybody outside their own team. And they probably don't speak much within their team. They're really, really specialized people, and their whole thing is about being quiet, undercover, unseen, unheard. So when I get to his book, he still doesn't speak. And I didn't want to break the character. And she wanted him to have dialogue and somebody to chat with and pair him up with. And somebody like that would make him nuts, right? If you have a couple that's that much of a mismatch, I can't see it being a long-term love relationship. I'm sure they exist where he or she talks continuously and the other one processes everything internally and never speaks. But it just didn't strike me that way. So I came up with Claudia, who pretty much doesn't speak. She's a real loner. She's very private. And so the two of them, when they communicate, much of it isn't in words. A lot of it's in internal dialogue and gestures and small things that they do. So I had a whole book with almost no dialogue in it, and the editor went nuts. Thankfully, my fans loved it, and I loved it because it's so true to Michael. So I want to talk briefly about the mission types that there are. And there are white ops, which are the kind of things that you publicize. Uh, you know, we're going into from Bagram Air Base, we're headed into the city to try to suppress ISIS, or we're trying to take back Mosul, or free Aleppo. Those are all white ops. Black ops are ones that aren't talked about, and they might get out. They might even eventually be planned to get out, like the raid on bin Laden's compound. Very dark going in, no pre-news, no advertisement, but they afterward it may or may not make the news. But I wanted to some way to describe the missions that nobody can talk about, the ones that we will never hear about unless something goes really, really, really wrong. So I cooked up the Black and Black, and that's my invention, um, because I couldn't find out what they would actually call it among themselves. So the Black and Black is nobody knows they were there. After it's done, nobody knows they were there. And I took it so far that nobody outside the action team or the people who actually ordered it, like the president and Secretary of Defense, would know about the mission occurring at all. So this book is actually the series ended up being based on these Black and Black missions that we would never see or know about anyway, which is very convenient as a fiction author because that way uh, nobody can say, oh, that would never happen because there's nothing like it in the news. So I sent them to Azerbaijan. Now, the problem here, you can see Azerbaijan in the middle of this, is they're nowhere near the ocean. To get, they're also incredibly oil rich country. Literally, apparently, the country smells of oil. It's what you smell when you get off the plane. And uh, the the ones, the people around the Caspian Sea, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Iran, those are really, they're all on to one side, and Azerbaijan kind of wants to be on the west. They want the capitalism, they want the trade, they want the, but how do they get there? Because they're also trapped behind Georgia and Armenia, and Armenia isn't much help because they're trapped behind Turkey. So it's a very pinned down country. And then the Caspian Fleet is the Russian fleet, and they have. Let's see if I can get this to work. Where's the pointer? Okay, laser pointer. If you look here out the top, this is the only access to the sea, and it sweeps way up into Russia through a ton of locks, couple rivers, the Volga, before it finally can reach the ocean. So the way Azerbaijan trades is they send oil through pipelines that go through not especially friendly countries. And there's a Kazakhstan also is sending a lot of oil this way through through to, so it's a very heavy, very important pipeline. Um, and the Russians want absolute control. The Iranians want absolute control. So they're all fighting over Azerbaijan, who's kind of sitting there going, ah! So I sent the team in to, if you will, free Azerbaijan from the Russian influence. But of course, it can't be known that America stepped all the way into Azerbaijan. So there's my Black and Black mission. Now, how do I? My problem with the two characters was, why does somebody end up being that quiet, yet having that level of skills that both Michael and Claudia show? And I started thinking about who really, the loners who really go way out and do something really interesting or strange. And one of the things was the biggest redwoods, which are the tallest trees in the world. Um, there's a group of them called the Titans, which are the biggest of the biggest. And I read a book called The Wild Trees by Stephen Sillett and Richard Preston, and they went out and started climbing and measuring the redwoods. And the only real way to measure these things is to go up them. And so they came up with climbing techniques that weren't going to hurt the tree. And they uh, the discoveries they made as they went up through the tree and found the different habitats up there and found the way the tree grew and the kind of storm damage that occurred and the dangers of the climb. And so that became Michael's history. And it became a very romantic moment of Michael and Claudia climbing a tree together. And it's as real as I could make it. I actually read several books about this. And uh, he's moving to a place that's not connected to the ground. He's moving to a place that's very isolated and very individual and very quiet. And haven't climbed Titans myself, but in my bike trip around the world, I ended up bicycling into some very strange, very remote places, the Australian outback being one of my favorites, where I knew for a fact there was nobody within 50 kilometers of where I put my tent because there were so few houses that the 1,100-kilometer long state map showed every house in the outback, every cattle station. So I took that sense of peace that I had discovered and gave it to Michael, and then, but also all those survival skills and all those tactical skills served him very well in something like Delta Force, where it's extremely individual dependent. They their teams are built from individuals, unlike the SEALs, where they're built from teams and they function as teams. Delta Force trains individuals and then assembles them as needed to carry out a mission. But I wanted somebody who could fit him. I needed somebody to be his other side. So here he is in one of the lushest environments there is, the fog-fed forests of the Titans of Northern California. So, so I gave Claudia the desert, and I went to the Sonoran Desert as part of a college geology field trip. We went to college up in Maine, and we went down on a 6-week field trip as a department to Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. We spent a week in each mapping the kind of rocks we'd never seen in Maine or anywhere in the Northeast, and went out exploring. If you hear a buzzing in the background, there's a plane doing stunt practice over my house for some reason. Um, anyway, uh, I got to love the Sonoran Desert. It was plenty hot in May, but the peace of it and the expanse of it and the emptiness was a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And that aching blue sky that they get over the dry desert was just captivating. Uh, I've revisited a couple times over the years, once during monsoon season, where from basically 1 to 2 o'clock every afternoon, deluge on the desert, and then everything turned to steam. So that was really crazy. That was August, so it was really hot. But anyway, so I thought about putting Claudia in that desert. The way I landed on Bumblebee is actually pretty funny. Is when I was just a beginning writer, somebody came to visit the class. I was taking a series of classes, and it was this lovely young woman, uh, my age. We were all younger back then, and she said she was from Bumblebee, Arizona. It was like, Bumblebee? Never heard of it. And I thought I knew the area reasonably well. Looked it up on a map, and it had a population of like 17. It's basically a ghost town way out in the middle of nowhere. And uh, she was really lovely. We were becoming friends. And she said, I have to go back. This is too many people. I have to go back to Bumblebee. And I lost touch with her shortly after that. But um, it always gave me kind of a warm place in my heart whenever I think of Bumblebee. It was this lovely young writer who wanted to be in one of the cabins and one of the 17 people within, again, vast distances between places. Uh, and so I went and researched Bumblebee and I've still never been there, but that I gave Claudia the desert, and that gave her the contrast to Michael's lush world. And the two of them came to the same place through very different paths. And I really like that. So I'm very pleased with this book, even though my editor hated it. She didn't hate it. She just hated that there was no dialogue. But true to character. Well, that's it for Bring on the Dusk. Please visit my website at mlbuchman.com. There's recipes there, other links to other videos, maps, bonus scenes, all kinds of good stuff. You can also reach me there if you have any more questions. Thanks for watching.